Hi everyone, this is Andrea from Moskito Real Estate, and today we're in Tulum and I'm going to interview my client Jen for you to check how this process was. Let's go and check it out.
Hey!
Hola, Jen.
It's
How
great
are
to see you. Come
Thank you
on
for
in.
opening your doors to your beautiful house. Hi Jen.
Hi, Andrea.
I just wanted to ask you some questions about, can you share with future clients how did we meet and how did you find out about Moskito?
So I had rented vacation properties from Moskito over the years and had a really good feeling about the experiences that I had with those properties and the communication and everything. And then you had a listing that I was very interested in, and you were incredibly responsive. And, you know, even though it had sold before I had time to even come down and look at it, you were very helpful with the whole process. And I had been working with other people who were not as responsive and didn't follow up, and you were very conscientious. So it matched the experience I had had all the way through when I was renting from Moskito, that, you know, people would always get back to me, my dates would be confirmed. So I went into things having a feeling of, you know, comfort, knowing that you know, I was going to get a response and that we could communicate. I was very impressed from the beginning with the fact that you spoke good English. You were very patient about answering questions because I have a lot of questions.
And we met through a Zoom call, which I feel that it was more convenient, because sometimes when you talk over the phone, it's hard to put a face into the agents or how did you feel, right?
100%, that's right. That was 100%. But I think even before we had the Zoom call, you had been very conscientious about answering, I think, emails. And, you know, you had sent me a lot of information, and that was really helpful. This has been a long journey for me because I started coming to Tulum when I was in college, which was, you know, in the 80s. And of course there was, you know, nothing here. But I fell in love with the beach and the people and the weather and always wanted to be here. And actually, as part of the process of picking Tulum and finding the right property, we had looked at other places up and down the coast. And, you know, when we finally settled on Tulum, it was part of, because there's so much vibrant culture here and the properties are just amazing.
You like the design and the, because I remember when we first met that you were very interested in the design, something new, but at the same time something that looked Mexican, right?
Right, exactly. That's very true. There's kind of a, I'd say a Tulum style, you know, that that I wanted. And actually, you're very kind. I was very picky, I think.
But I knew what you wanted.
I think it helped that you have a design kind of eye, that's your background, because, you know, I think in some cases where I didn't feel like there was a good match between myself and my husband, Rob, and the broker, they weren't as receptive to understanding that the details about the design and things like that were important. And I think you know, got it without having to, you know, it didn't take a lot of explaining. You understood why that was important.
And later we can show them your beautiful house so then they can see what we mean about design. Jen, how was your experience with the buying process in the Riviera Maya? Was it easier or different than you expected?
It was easier than I expected. And part of, I think, the fact that it was easier than I expected is that, you know, years earlier, we had almost bought a property in Playa del Carmen. And at the time, the process was not so transparent. So we had come out of that experience, you know, not necessarily, we didn't necessarily have negative feelings about it, but we expected it to be a lot of work. And I feel like the way that you approached explaining what the process was going to be. We went into things knowing what to expect, and it really was much easier. It really pretty much was painless, actually. And I love the fact that you connected us with an attorney. That process was amazing. Actually, there was a lot about it that was easier than the United States. Of course, given that we're close to the beach, and that in Mexico you have to have it was very seamless. And everything went, because we had it so worked out, and you were really helpful with the translations. I mean, that was the greatest thing. In addition to you, the rest of the team helping in terms of the translations, and the entire process made it very easy.
Because I feel that also it's important that, for example, you as an investor, for you to know what to expect, right? The cost of the property, but then the cost of the fideicomiso or bank trust, and the cost of the closing costs. So then you have like a timeline on what to expect in terms of your budget and the closing costs.
Right, and then that works out better for everybody, right? Mm-hmm. For the developer, for us. I mean, I think that that's something that people, from the United States expect because of the way our process goes. And I think one of the advantages you and Moskito have is that I feel that you very much approach things the way the real estate brokers in the U.S. that I worked with approached process. It's actually, I think my mom was a real estate agent. She acted as a buyer's agent. And what I felt with you that I think was, really superior compared to other people that I had talked to was that you approach things from a buyer's agent perspective, and that made a real difference.
Oh, thank you. How was the communication, or what was the difference between maybe you buying by yourself or using a real estate agent that is certified with the credentials?
That's a great question. I think one of the things you were able to do very effectively that made a real difference was that you were able to communicate with our developer, as a person that lives in the community. You had an understanding of, some of the issues that I think he was dealing with locally, and there were a lot of instances where you really made the whole communication process much easier. I would say you went above and beyond in terms of helping us communicate, and we were really happy with how, it ended up being. There were points where he didn't necessarily understand, I think, what we were looking for. Although he is an English speaker and he was very receptive, I think you were really helpful in making sure that communication was clear and in following up. When we couldn't be here, that was invaluable. You sent videos, you were in, constant communication. So we never had a feeling of, oh my God, what's going on? What's happening with the property? And that really gave us a good sense of assurance. Because I think like a lot of when you're buying new construction, like a lot of the properties down here, while the house was started, there was a lot to be completed as we were moving forward, and you were really helpful with that.
I remember that we had our punching list, and I was like, we need to do this is missing, and then that way, yes. I mean, for me, it was very important that you feel guided, and also that you feel that I'm your eyes here while you're in your house, and then sometimes you couldn't come, and
yes, exactly. There were some important milestones going on with the construction that you were able to be here and communicate, and it made a real difference. So that was very helpful. I mean, I think the thing that I learned out of this process, because the homes that I bought in the U.S. were not new construction, one of the things I learned was that, a developer or a person who's doing the work has a different perspective from the person who's, buying. And I think you were really helpful in translating,
Yes, that way you're neutral, and you're not only to one side, right? You're someone that also sees your interest and then seeing the process and how it has been developed, and someone that is in between.
Exactly. I think that's very true. And this is something personal about you, but you are very diplomatic. So I think sometimes there were requests that we had or things that we had that you had a really good way of putting it, so that we didn't become those people like, oh my God, they're writing again, you know?
How was the process of using a bank trust, fideicomiso in Spanish, to invest in your property? Would you say it was straightforward?
It was very straightforward. And actually, that was one of the things about it, I think, that was pleasantly surprising. When we had initially looked at property years ago, it wasn't explained as well. So even though I don't think the terms had really changed or anything, my husband didn't trust it and went into it. That was probably his biggest concern, was the trust. And it actually, everything was explained really well. We really, appreciated the interaction between you and the attorney. And every step of the way, we felt comfortable,
And did you feel it was easy and...
Yeah, basically you guys laid it out, and the attorney followed the process, and we knew where to go, and it was pretty seamless. And I think that's the thing, you put so much energy into being worried about it because it's legal and it's a bank trust and it sounds scary, but it really wasn't, because it was explained so well, it wasn't at all difficult to understand. I do think that that's the importance of working with somebody that you trust, though, too, because I know that sometimes it's not that way. And so it's important that anybody going into it get a good explanation. And I really felt like you did that from the very beginning, from those initial Zoom calls. We talked about what to expect, and that made a big difference. You know how my husband is, he's got some anxieties. He needs to make sure he feels comfortable.
And, it's important for me, or it was important for me, that you both felt guided and understood. And as many times as I have to explain it, or the lawyers, for me it's important that you know the process and always to have questions, and then that way you feel 100% guided in the process. Because yes, sometimes clients they have doubts and then they don't ask, and for me it's super important to have all their questions resolved.
I have to say, I cannot think of a question we had that you weren't able to answer. I mean that very sincerely. If you didn't have the answer right away, you're always very good about saying, I'll find that out for you, and then you followed up. You're very good at keeping track of things, punch lists and things like that. Yeah, so that really mattered, I know, to Rob, because, that was the part of it he was concerned about. He could come, he has construction experience, so he came, he felt very, confident in terms of what we were seeing about the building. It was all the legal things and the paperwork that he didn't have the confidence in. So that was a really important piece of it.
That's a big thing. And now that you have your house in Tulum, how do you feel about your investment?
I think we're really happy about it. We've been able to rent it out as a vacation rental, and that's just been amazing. The whole process, the comments we've gotten back, that was something I didn't go into the whole thing expecting necessarily to be able to do, because I've had friends who were down here and renting, and it's a lot. There's a lot that goes on when you're allowing your home to be used by other people, but in that sense, the investment has really exceeded our expectations as well. And we went into this intending for this to be something that we, as a family value long term. But I do have the feeling that because, working with you and really knowing what was on the market and feeling confident about this property, I feel like it's a good investment. And, I think, when you see and you hear comments from other people who are looking in the area and have bought, I think, it's going to be a good long-term investment as well.
Would you recommend this experience to others looking to invest here? And any final thoughts or advice for future buyers?
I absolutely would recommend working with you. I've already recommended you, quite a few times. I do think if you're working with the right, person and you go into things with some, basic understandings, it's a very easy process. I guess my caveats about it would be that I do think it's important to work with somebody that, spends time like you did. I mean, I think by the time we made the decision on this property, we had seen enough to feel really confident. And I had spent years coming to Tulum. So, basically what I tell people, because we've had people who've stayed in the house who want to know, hey, how do I get a house like this? Is anything else in this neighborhood for sale? And I usually say you need to come more than just once, get comfortable with what the environment is, make sure that this is really what you want. It's a matter of, doing your homework, I think. And then, but if you go into the process having done your homework with the right expectations, I think you'll be happy.